Joining me now in London is journalist Nazenin Ansari. She's the managing editor of the Iranian opposition newspaper Kayhan, London. Nazenin, good to have you on the program. Is this about fuel subsidies or about much more than fuel subsidies?
Thank you for inviting me. Certainly the government would like to portray it as a protest against fuel subsidies. But certainly when you look at the symbolism that is being used in demonstrations, in the protests, it goes far beyond. We have seen the portraits of Ayatollah Khamenei being burnt down. There have been Iranian flags burnt down in the middle where there's the emblem of the Islamic Republic. There has been even like big rings of Ayatollah Khomeini being made with the writings on it and then being put on fire. The demonstrations, the slogans are all against Mr. Khamenei and the Islamic Republic. So it is not only about fuel protests, it is not only about the fuel. Inflation has been rising for the past 40 years, but at the end of the day, the time is here, and as we see from the reaction of the Islamic Republic, by shutting down the internet, by not allowing access to information, but by not allowing footage of what is really happening to get out, they would like to control the information and to divide the rising voices in the international community.
Okay, so Nazenin, yes, they restricted the internet. Yes, there has been a crackdown. People have died on the streets. All of that is true. But wouldn't you say that if we look at it from the long view and the perspective, especially of the Trump administration, as it pulled out of the nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions, the purpose of sanctions was to squeeze the Iranian economy, to get the Iranian people to turn against the Iranian government. So with all of that in mind, the leadership isn't cooking up a conspiracy when they say the Americans are involved here. The Americans are involved in the sense that the sanctions are working and the people are turning against this government because of the sanctions, right?
Well, it is more than that. Sanctions, yes, sanctions are hurting. But the leaders of the Islamic Republic at every single juncture had a choice of whether to divert the funds that were coming into the country towards increasing the quality of life of Iranians or siphoning it off to Iraq, to Lebanon, to Yemen, to support their forces there. I take one example of medicine shortage. Why is it that they complain at times that, because of sanctions, Iranians are short of medicine, but still they can find enough medical equipment and enough medicine to export to Iraq and other neighboring countries where they are active.
Okay, fair argument. Let's go to Tehran, where Foad Izadi joins us. He's a political science professor at the University of Tehran. I understand the connection is a little bit shaky, so I hope it holds. Foad, good to have you on the program. Doesn't Nazenin make a good point that yes, the sanctions do hurt the Iranian economy, but that hasn't stopped Iran from its empire building in Iraq and Lebanon and elsewhere? If the sanctions are hurting, don't you focus on your own people first?
Yes, I think that's a valid argument that you need to focus on your people first. And Iran's regional influence is designed to do that. We remember what happened when Iran could not have proper relations with the Iraqi government. We had a person like Saddam Hussein that gained power in Iraq and then attacked Iran. That resulted in 8 years of war, and many Iranians and Iraqis were killed because of that war. So that gave Iranian government a lesson, and the lesson was that in order to make sure that Iranian people are safe, they need to have a regional policy that makes sure that enemies of Iran are not able to use neighboring countries to attack Iran.
Nazenin? Okay. Foad, let me get a response from Nazenin. Certainly.
Has a logic behind
there's a bit of a delay here as well, so my apologies. Nazenin, come in. I'm going to get you two to respond to each other because we have about 3.5 minutes left on this segment. So, Nazenin, come in. Your response.
Yes, well, I mean, certainly Iran's, the Islamic Republic's posturing in the foreign policy has been, and its excuse, not to allow the crisis that is taking place elsewhere in the Middle East, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, to get to Iran. In a way, they justified their policy in Syria of increasing aid, of sending revolutionary guards, of sending their other supporters to Syria as to keep Iran safe. Obviously, this strategy, if they keep saying that it is foreign power, has failed. And that is one thing that we see different this time around from other times when Iran was going through protests. The Islamic Republic's strategy has failed. Next, Mr. Rouhani, last time, in the last couple of weeks, has announced that he's going to give 2 budgets to the parliament, to offer 2 budgets not based on oil revenues, but based on tourism. At a time when the Revolutionary Guards are taking dual nationals as hostage, do you think there will be tourism in Iran?
Foad Izadi.
I mean, this is, all of these are wrong rationality and misplaced priorities.
Foad, if Nazenin is right and the priorities are misplaced, do you agree that the government is losing legitimacy in the eyes of the people because so many people are out on the streets?
There are 3 types of people on the streets as we speak. We have people who oppose the government because of economic hardship. We have people who oppose the government because of political disagreements. And then we have a third group that is linked with terrorist organizations, MKO, monarchists, other organizations. And these are designed, these groups, the third group, are basically shooting at the police. As you saw in the footage that you had, they're burning banks, they're burning public places. These are not ordinary citizens. These are not peaceful protesters. So we have the Iranian opposition sitting in London and using the money that they get from the Saudi government, the money they get from the US government, the money they get from the Israeli government to create difficulties for Iran.
Let me get a final response from Nazenin.
The Iranian government is weak and they're going to fall.
So,
and they have been saying that for the last 40 years.
Nazenin, are you getting money from the Saudis and the Americans and the Israelis, and that's why you have this perspective?
Our publication goes back to 1941 in Iran, and we have been continuing based on the support of our community and our own people. There has been no government funding, international government funding, foreign government backing, or Islamic Republic backing for us. That's number 1. Number 2, it is that the protests are continuing in Iran, and we do not have access. No international observer has access to Iran. If the Iranian government would open the internet and allow the footage to coming out, we wouldn't be hearing there are reports that there are helicopters shooting down on people in Shiraz. We have to verify this. And the only way we can verify this is for the internet to be opened.
Right.
And I am very happy that that Dr. Shirin Ebadi, the Nobel Prize winner, has started a petition asking the United Nations and as well European governments to really urge the Iranian government to open the internet and stop the brutal crackdown on the protesters.
Okay,
it's enough.
Right, Nazenin and Foad, this will be our introduction to this latest round of protests and all the ramifications. We'd love to have you back on the program soon, but I've got to move on to Sri Lanka now. So let me thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers.